Alright, I've skipped the boring part.
Now that we're in the area of operations, you can enable the master arm switch. With the weapon system armed, you will see some new icons in the heads-up display. At the center, you have the weapon targeting reticle, or pipper. Up here, you have weapon type, name, and shots remaining. You can cycle through all the armed weapons by pressing the button on the joystick. These unguided weapons can be fired simply by pulling the trigger on the joystick. You have limited stores, so save your rounds for the targets. Let's try deploying the GAU-8 on some ground targets. In a moment, you will receive a mission objective. You can auto-slew your TGP to the objective waypoint by pressing the waypoint button in the TGP screen. Go ahead and destroy the tanks at the objective waypoint.
Alright, I've found that there's a head targeting thing, so that little box there that's moving where I look should mean that it's a bit easier to target, so I'll just try that and see if I can take out these tanks. Straighten up here. Yeah, I'm wondering as well if I tilt my engines a little, that should slow me right down. So I can do a pass over these much slower. Theoretically, at 90 degrees, I should hover. Okay, so if I look at these... That's not really helping, is it? Three tanks down there.
Altitude. Altitude. Over T.
Let's get on target here. That's one down. Already doing a lot better than last time.
Altitude. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Altitude. 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 Altitude.
Whoa!
Altitude.
That was a little close. Okay. Maybe my tilting idea was not so great. Let's just go full speed. missed that guy. Alright, spin around in front of the pass.
Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T.
I'm hoping I didn't just get really lucky on that last one. Alright, let's just slow right down.
Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. Altitude. Over T. 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 Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. 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 Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. Altitude. Over T.
That's close.
Over T. 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 Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. Altitude. Altitude.
It looks so tiny down there.
Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Pull up. Pull up.
Yes!
Altitude. Altitude. Over T.
Oh, it's 2 down.
Over T. Over T. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. Pull up.
Yes!
Altitude. 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 Altitude.
Alright, well, that's the third one down.
Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. Altitude.
Oh!
Altitude.
Damn, that was close. Whew.
Over T. Over T. Over T. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Over G. Over G. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear.
I'm not trying to
Landing
land
gear.
here.
Altitude. Altitude. Altitude.
Are you kidding me? That
Altitude.
nailed it.
Altitude. Altitude. Altitude.
Maybe I'm supposed to take
Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing gear.
Did I get him? No.
Altitude. 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 Altitude.
I'm aware of the altitude.
Over D. Over D. Over D. Altitude. Altitude.
Great job. Now let's work with rockets.
Altitude. Altitude.
Hydra 70s are small, unguided rockets. By default, each pull of the trigger will fire one rocket.
Over D.
However, they can be configured to launch rapidly. This is called ripple firing. To access a weapon's config menu, set the equipment MFD page to config mode. Then select the weapon you want to configure. If you have multiple of the same weapon type mounted in different locations, your settings will be copied over to all of them. Try setting the rockets to different ripple intervals and destroy the next set of targets.
Alright, see how this goes.
Over G. Over G. Shoot. 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 Altitude. Altitude. Pull up. Altitude. Pull up. Altitude. Altitude. Over G. Over G.
Probably shouldn't waste my missiles too fast. I've only got 28 left.
Over G. Over G.
Come on.
Altitude. 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 Pull up. Altitude. Altitude. Altitude.
I think I got it. There's only one target left. One target and 15 rockets.
Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T.
Oh, you're kidding me, it's 2.
Over T.
Must have missed.
Plop. 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 Altitude. Plop. Altitude. Altitude. Over T. Over T. Over T. Altitude. 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 Plop. Altitude. 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 Altitude.
Do not need to know that I'm flying low this entire time.
Over T. 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 Shoot. Shoot. Altitude. Altitude. Plop. Altitude. Plop. Altitude. 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 Altitude.
Alright, I'm pretty sure I missed with everything, so...
Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T. Over T.
Put 2 rockets
Over
left.
T. Over T. Plop. 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 Altitude. Altitude. Over T.
Alright, I'm totally out of everything.
Altitude.
See a plane.